Tunavites, the draft came and is gone, and we're here to talk about all of the draft picks, just the fun things throughout the night, and everything in between. But first, Richard, I got to ask you something.
Yes, sir.
So I was reading in the Atlantic News today that Tuna Light helps with your mental capacity in fantasy football.
Right.
So not only is it healthy for you to help you build strong muscles, healthy eating, it actually helps with your mental abilities in fantasy football. So Tunavites, make sure you eat your Tuna Light, okay? They come in all sorts of flavors, and it's pretty healthy for you. In other news, Richard.
It comes in different flavors.
It does come, yeah, Richard. It comes in different flavors. Okay, they got all sorts of. Okay, they got barbecue, peanut butter. You name it. Okay. You should try the peanut butter one. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You get a lot of protein. Yeah, pretty tasty. You would never think about tuna and peanut butter, but I'm just saying.
All right.
Okay, Tunavites, I got some exciting news to share with you all. So Richard and I have been doing Tuna Bus here for getting close now to a year, okay? And our ratings are just soaring. They're going through the roof. I'm so excited to tell you this. Okay, we went from 3 subscribers last week all the way up to 4.
Woo,
4,
baby.
We're killing it, Richard. Fantasy footballers, get out of the way. We're coming. We're taking over
the league.
Yeah. Hopefully by the season's end, we'll get up to 5. I think that's a high mark to shoot for.
Right? That's a goal.
Yeah, that's what we want to shoot for. Okay, yeah. That's what I got, Richard. Okay, that's what I got for us. Okay. Sorry, I had to get that out there, Richard. Okay, just to let everybody know where we're at right now.
I appreciate it.
All right, what do we got next, Richard?
Well, I think the question that is on everybody's mind is, what happened to Captain Insano? He was so cryptic. He supposedly showed up at the draft. I'm afraid he might be an imposter. I'm not sure. It sounded like him. He sounded in good spirits. He made this weird post, and there has been silence since. So I don't know what's going on. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the first thing we all need to do is we need to file a missing person report because apparently Captain Insano is missing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Apparently he's missing, or he's on the run from something or someone. I don't know. I kind of felt like when I was watching that video, I felt like we should be playing like the Jaws music or something. That's what I felt like, because he was so scared. And I don't know. I think we need to interview Nathan and say, Nathan, what is going on with Captain Insano? Because as much as that guy is a little bit of a loose cannon, I was kind of hoping we'd have him this year.
Yeah, me too. That makes me upset.
Well, Richard, let's put it this way. Maybe we could have him. Maybe we could try to lure him out of his hiding and have him on the show and see what's going on. What's going on with Captain Insano, and because apparently there's a lot more going on, and I'd really like to know who's after him. So,
me too.
Yeah.
Maybe he can enlighten us. Maybe he can come back for 2020 on our show if he wants. It's an open invitation to him. Hopefully he watches. Maybe he's one of our subscribers. Who knows?
Hey, maybe he was the 4th one.
Yeah,
maybe that was it. Maybe. Listen, I don't care if it's Captain Insano or Batman. Okay, if we get another subscriber, to me that's a win in our
I tell you what, if we get a 5th subscriber, then I know he's alive. How about that?
Okay. All right. Well, I hope so. And Tunavites, keep watching, keep spreading. To all Tuna Land. Okay, that we have a show. We actually got video. That we actually put on some quality product. Okay. Quality content. All right. This is not fake news. Okay. Nothing fishy is going on Tuna Buzz. Okay.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Fish. No fishing around.
No, not at all. Not all right, Richard. What's next? What we got? Our news and notes here.
Well, yeah. Let's go back to the news and notes. What What? Anything else you got going on that we need to discuss?
Well, Richard, I feel like before we get into the draft and our post-draft, kind of analysis, and really, talking actual fantasy football, I do have to bring up. Did you read Dwayne's pre-draft post?
I did.
What were your thoughts about that?
I don't know. I can't remember it all. I gotta be honest. Should I bring it up?
Well, Dwayne, just so you know, it was very memorable. We all are still thinking about it quite a bit. Keep it up.
I just remember the parts about me, to be honest.
Yeah, well, Dwayne, keep it up. I like that you had the activity on the message board. Even if it was your like draft day manifesto or whatever you want to call that. Yeah. I like it. I'm hoping we get more activity.
I'm curious on the reaction. I didn't see any reaction. I have to say, I didn't see any reaction to his claim that his division should be the Dwayne division. That's surprising. I didn't hear anything. There's nothing. It's almost as if they already agree. Am I wrong?
I mean, maybe, we could just make that change and see how long it takes for them to even realize that, it's the Dwayne division. Yeah. So, yeah. I think Nathan would be the happiest about that, but, we could always see, Other news and notes, Richard, we got, this is the time of year. Of course, it's not a normal season, so we don't have actual preseason, but they got, the training camp. Guys are in pads. So anytime, a guy gets nicked up or, you see an injury, everybody's kind of like, what's going on? So I did see today that, speaking of Dwayne, a couple of his players, Kenyon Drake was spotted in a walking boot yesterday. Never a good thing before the season starts. And David Montgomery went down today with, I guess, apparently it was a groin injury, but,
mild. I think I read a mild.
Mild. Okay. Yeah. So, of course, you never know. And some of these injuries probably will be nothing by the time the season starts. But, of course, it always catches your eye. And then, of course, you kind of think about, well, is this something more than what they're giving?
That's what I thought. I'm like, who's the backup?
Right. I know. Yeah. Well, I guess, Tariq Cohen is, he's more the pass catching guy. But, So, anyways, Dwayne, sorry, buddy. Hopefully those guys are good to go because that's not what you want to see before the season starts. And we just did the draft.
That's
but
that's the rough part.
Yeah,
that's what's rough about drafting a little bit earlier than right before the season starts. But you got to do what you got to do to get everybody on the same day.
Yeah, well, and I think there's always injuries, and that's why I always say that when we go into our draft, and of course this year with COVID, you really just need to go as best you can, even though, we get to those later rounds and we're kind of like, okay, maybe I know something about this guy or I don't feel good, but just do your best to try to fill out a roster, whether it's a guy who's, he's got a lot of breakout potential, or maybe it's just some guy that, is stable, for your roster. It's important because injuries happen. And I know, Richard, we're about to get in the draft right now, but the reality is there are guys on the waiver wire right now that are going to make a huge impact this year that weren't drafted because it happens every year. And so, as much as we do put in the draft, you got to be on the waiver wire and you got to pay attention. And, because the draft is a big part of the season, but it's not everything. Richard, I have to ask you, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit disappointed in CBS.
Oh, what happened?
Because I expected to get a full, recap of the draft, and they do their whole like rankings and grades and all that. And I've not seen it.
Maybe they knew that we were going to do this.
Maybe, but I think maybe we need to protest. Maybe okay, it's 2020. Maybe we need to do that.
2020 style. Should I bring my bat?
No, bring your fishing pole, Richard. So Yeah. Anyways, I'm kind of hoping that they're going to go down. It's just fun, whether you agree with it or not. I always just like to, who's last, who's first. And then I personally just like to go through like their grades. They go through positions and whatnot. So I'm hoping they'll come out with it because it would be weird for them not to do it. I don't know why they would just suddenly stop doing it. But okay. Well, you didn't see that. I was looking for it and I thought, well, maybe I missed it somehow, but
I haven't seen it either.
okay. All right. All right. Well, I digress. We'll move on here, Richard. So let's get into the draft.
All right. Well, I think the question is for everybody, how'd we do? So my question to you is, how'd you do? Did you follow a plan? Were you able to execute the plan that you had planned for you? I keep saying plan. Yeah, how do you feel like you did as far as the beginning, the middle, the end, however you wanted to break it down? How did you do?
So I think, the draft kind of flowed. My strategy was this. I knew I was going to take I had 2 picks in the first round. So I knew that, that was from the trade me and Aaron did last year, but I didn't have a pick in the second round. And anytime you're one of the last picks, in each round, you're going to have there's challenges with that. Because you're going to have other people, of course, they're going to be picking the earlier rounds. So they're going to be filling out that roster and they're going to be getting whatever the receiver, running back, whoever it is. And so when you're picking towards the end for most of the draft, as I was, other than a couple picks, you really have to kind of think through, okay, what am I going to do? Because as we saw in this draft, there was runs on positions throughout the draft. So mine was, okay, let me get a receiver. I felt pretty confident I was going to take a receiver, at least one in the first round. So it was kind of funny because, you gave your top 3 and it was, DJ Moore was it. And so I didn't think I was even going to get DJ Moore because I thought you were going to be at number 3. I figured you're going to take him. And so, you didn't, and then everybody else in front of me took running backs kind of like I expected. So after I took Moore, I was debating about what I was going to do. There were some running backs that I liked that I thought if they fell to me, maybe I would, like James Conner for Pittsburgh. Josh took him, and he's a huge injury risk. But the thing is, if he's healthy, and we can talk about that later when we look at Josh's team more specifically, but if he's healthy, he's a top 10 back. And so I was, there's guys like that I was kind of like, well, if they come up to me, that's all goes back to that. Do you take best player available all the time, or do you really attack, your position that you're trying to fill? Obviously, I needed to get a receiver. We talked about how deep the receiver class was. There was a lot of receivers. So I got DJ Moore. I felt good about that. But then also somebody I was targeting, and I kind of was going back and forth, was Mark Andrews at the tight end position. Which typically tight ends, as you got the top tier, and then the rest of it, is kind of, they're all blended together, but there's always a couple that come out of the pack. Usually it's a later round tight end. In my case last year was Darren Waller, who was not even drafted. But there always is a tight end. So I noticed with this draft, of course, at the end of it, a lot of people took, tight ends that have potential to break out, because there's going to be at least 1 or 2 of those guys that are going to be way better than where they were drafted. So my thought was, after Andrews, if Mark Andrews, if I didn't draft him, I was going to wait all the way, till I was going to be much later in the draft to get a tight end. But I really liked Andrews. Probably, the only thing is I did pass on some really great receivers. But part of my strategy was I knew that if I didn't take Andrews at the end of the first, at least I believed, I don't think he would have been there by the time I got to the end of the third. And I just really liked him. He was a player I really liked. They traded away Hayden Hurst. So now it should be more targets for him. They also, I read a thing that said that he was on something like 40% of the offensive snaps for the Ravens last year, which is crazy when you think that, he finished top 5. So I just really liked him going into this season. So I decided to go with him. But in doing that, and I knew when I took him, there was going to be a lot of receivers that I was missing out on for a second receiver that were gone.
Yeah, because the moment you did, it was
huge run.
Wide receivers.
A lot
of wide receivers.
A lot. Yeah. So, that was that was a risk that I took. But like I kind of mentioned last time, the reason I was willing to take that risk and just kind of go with it was because the receiver is so deep. Obviously there's ones that are better than others, but it's just a really deep position. And so I just felt like, if I got a tight end and Andrews, who, if he's healthy, he's a top 5. Tight end's a tough position anyway. So I just felt like I got a difference maker there. And then I would just kind of go attack what I could get, from the receiver position later. But one of the things I did was, because as you mentioned, there was a lot of receivers gone. I mean, a lot of guys I really, really liked, which we'll talk about. And I kind of debated with some of those guys. You grabbed DJ Chark. He was a guy I really liked. Jonathan, right before, got to me, he took DK Metcalf, another guy that I liked. And so there was like this whole group of receivers. So I was going to take a receiver at the end of the 3rd round. But by the time, all those receivers were gone, and once Metcalf was gone, I kind of was just looking at the board and I said, you know what, I'm probably just going to wait because, you know how we have they talk about like tiers, and everybody has in their draft. They're like, well, okay, these are the guys you really want at this position if it's gone. And so once that happened and Kareem Hunt was still there, I just decided, you know what, for value and for him getting a 3rd running back, I was like, I'm just going to take him and then just go the receiver. So, after I did Hunt, which I felt good about, then it was just taking shots at a 2nd receiver. And so, that's certainly going to be an area that, I'm weaker in. And if some of those guys don't take off or break out or pan out, I could be hurting there. But that was kind of where my strategy was. And I think, again, we talk about pivoting and changing, as the draft goes along. And that was kind of me with Andrews and Kareem Hunt, where I was at, those first, after the DJ Moore pick, those other picks kind of were just like how the draft was flowing. And it worked out pretty well. I mean, when I got Hunt, I felt good about it. And then, once I went back and I took Will Fuller, there wasn't, and he's a guy I wanted. So it wasn't.
You took Will Fuller. It's like, didn't you have him last year?
Yeah. I had Will Fuller, and then I took Edelman, who I had at the end of last year. And so, yeah, I mean, and Fuller has tons of potential, but he's a huge risk. So, my thinking was just taking a bunch of receivers to try to fill that, 2nd, and then maybe flex. My hope is that if at least one of those guys can take off, then it'll work out. But it's kind of like some people do with running backs. They'll draft heavy on receivers and other positions, and then they just take a bunch of shots at running back and hope that, one of them's going to take off. So that was really all my strategy. My strategy really wasn't, I wanted to have enough depth of running back, which we've talked about, trying to have. But then it was just, draft a bunch of receivers. And then, the only thing I did that I don't normally do, and we talked about this, was, I don't ever keep a quarterback. So I kept, because I had Lamar Jackson, of course I kept him. Yeah. And so usually I wait till the end, so.
I feel like that really drove your decisions, because I wanted to comment on it just a little bit, because your draft, the way it went, I think was very different than you've ever done before, because you had a quarterback, you had a running back, you had a wide receiver, and by the end of the 1st round, you had a tight end. So you were really filling out the roster position by position, where, for instance, last year you had I might be exaggerating, but 5 running backs before round 3 started. So it was like, I remember at least the last 2 years I was thinking, does he realize that he already has a full set ready to go wide receivers or running backs, and he's drafting another one, but this year you did contrary to what you normally do, from my observation. I don't know if you feel the same way, but that was my observation.
Oh, totally.
It was
totally.
Really interesting. You took Mark Andrews. That surprised me, I have to admit. I really thought you were going to go wide receiver.
Well, it was going to be Andrews or receiver. And I did, I kind of went back and forth with this, because I felt like Andrews would be there. But again, I knew he wouldn't be at the end. And part of it was just looking at the receivers and saying, okay, if I take Andrews, what receivers could be available to me? Is it going to be worth the risk? Now, to be honest with you, I mean, and you can look at even preseason ranks. I mean, there are other receivers overall that I would value over Andrews. So that was kind of an instance where I took, kind of a position, but also a player that I really liked and believe in for this year over maybe some of the other guys that, if they're hitting, like Beckham or Juju or whoever you want to put, if they're playing like we've seen them play, I mean, they can be amazing. I guess the way that I was looking at Andrews was that, I'm kind of hoping and looking for him to take that next step to be, closer to Kittle and Kelsey. Whether that's really going to happen, I'm not sure it will. But I mean, that's kind of what my thinking was going into it. But yeah, no, it was different, and you are right about that because I don't ever keep quarterbacks. And so not only did I keep a quarterback, but I'm drafting for the most part at the end of every single round. So it really puts you in a much different spot, kind of a difficult spot because, as we know, running backs and receivers are the most, that's where you need to load up the most on positions. So I kind of looked at it as, okay, I got Jackson, I've got a really great group of running backs. If I DJ Moore, who I think's a really great receiver. So I thought, hey, if I get one of the top, 5 tight ends, then at least, I took that route and then just decided, let me just hopefully figure it out with the rest of my receiving core. So yeah, it was different. It was much different than what I normally do in the draft. And even with quarterback, I don't normally backup quarterback. If I take one, usually it's way at the end of the draft. But again, I was kind of at a place where, because I have a guy like Lamar Jackson who could, he's going to run more than a lot of quarterbacks.
So you're worried about injury?
Yeah. And not that I think he's going to get hurt, but you just never know when you have a quarterback, any of those guys, Kyler Murray, any of those guys who can take off and run. You just never know. So I kind of got to a point in the draft where I just thought, Goff was sitting there, and I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and take him. Compared to some of the other guys, did I need to? No. I mean, you can stream quarterbacks, but just at that point, I just felt like, hey, he was still there, and I thought he would be a solid backup quarterback, for Jackson. So, yeah, it was a much different draft than what I typically do, for sure.
Do you feel like, so here, I guess one final question for your post draft analysis of yourself. Hindsight obviously is 2020. Do you feel like there's one decision anywhere in there that you wish you could?
One decision I wish I could go back and change. Well, I don't think I would. I don't know that I would go back and change the Mark Andrews pick. I think that's going to be one of the picks that we'll see how the season goes because, there's a lot of receivers that I left there that I could have drafted as a second receiver. And if Andrews, gets hurt or just something, he's just not what we saw him last year or whatever, and these other receivers take off, then I'll definitely regret that because that was a hard decision that, making that. But I didn't regret the decision to do it. Mm-hmm. I think probably if there was a decision that maybe, I don't know, maybe probably Goff. I mean, I took Goff and I was like, yeah, I could have just, waited till later, grab whatever quarterback. I mean, because again, depth is important. And when I took Goff, there were some running backs that, I liked that I could have taken that. Of course, they were gone once I took Goff. So, yeah, he might be one I guess I regret. I mean, I'm not sad to have him, but it was kind of one of those after I took him, I was like, I really probably could have just let him go. It wasn't really a big deal to me. In terms of maybe, somebody that I mean, there's definitely guys that a lot of guys I missed out on. We all have that, right? We're like, hey, I like this guy. I don't draft him this round. And then what happens? He gets taken. So yeah, maybe that one, but I mean, definitely the one that will kind of, and especially with my history, Richard, I'm the guy who took, OJ Howard last year, thinking he was going to have this great big season. And then he was a complete flop. And, so
I did the same thing with whatever his name is from the Giants. So yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's tough. It really is. And I'm one of those guys like tight end. I don't know. I can go both ways on it, but I just know that and I've seen it with like PC, he's had Kelsey for however many years, and you have such if you get a tight end that's so good, one of the top ones, I mean, it really gives you an advantage. Yeah. It's like having a number one receiver, in that spot. So I don't know, but it is hard to find those. There's not many of them, and they do get hurt a lot, like running backs. So, that's one of those things where I usually tell myself every year, okay, I'm just going to wait till the end to get a tight end, but then I always get lured by somebody that is in the player pool or whatever. So there you have it. I'm a soft spot for trying to get a good, really great tight end. But
I mean, and you proved like be able to do that with Waller last year. I mean,
yeah,
you hit gold, when you grabbed him. So that's
yeah,
definitely. I mean, I really think that was one of the league winning things you did was doing. But just I think even if you didn't have Lamar Jackson, you would have been, competing in the playoffs anyway. It was that was a good pickup for you.
yeah,
Because it was
yeah. So
cheap. You
Richard,
didn't have to expend much.
true. True. Well, again, that's why you check the waivers. Even now, I mean, we're talking like players just getting like either injured or even if it's just minor. But you go look who's the backup, who's this guy. I saw today that Jonathan, picked up Damian Harris and for the Patriots because they've got some guys trying to come back, Michelle and all them, and so you just never know. And of course, you definitely never know with the Patriots running backs, but. I mean, it's worth a shot. If you got an extra roster spot that you don't care about this guy, he might take off. So, so Richard,
Yes.
so how are you feeling with your draft strategy? Of course, you made the big trade before the draft. So take us through your strategy. What, kind of you were thinking.
Well, so when we talked last, and I told you my top three were, and I'll tell you in order. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it was Kenyon Drake, and it was DJ Moore. That was the order, and that was genuinely my order.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started hearing about Miles Sanders, and that he was hurt, and that he was day to day as far as the evaluation. And I'm sitting there going, I got 2 running backs, which is pretty good. And I've got my wide receiver that's okay, pretty good. He's pretty steady. I really don't want to start the season with a question mark with a running back. And my chances of getting those top 2 running backs that I wanted, that was like the tier. I felt like those 2 were a tier above all the other ones that were available. And so I really wanted that tier of running back. That's what I had, even though he was hurt. I feel like Miles Sanders is a tier above. He was in that same tier. And so, and I had talked to Dwayne before keepers about Jacobs as well. We talked about different trades and how we just couldn't get together on it. And I think partly was we evaluated things differently between what we were talking about. We just couldn't get on the same page. So this time around, I talked to you last week about how this year I wanted to kind of treat first round differently. I wanted to treat second round differently. I wanted to really get more value picks and really kind of look more towards availability and scoop up quantity more than long shots. I wanted more quantity of long shots than 1 or 2. So so I approached Dwayne and I offered the trade for the and after going back and forth, we settled on what we did, and I admit that I think I definitely overpaid. I wasn't going to say that I overpaid until after the draft, but yeah, I definitely overpaid. Partly was I just wanted to get the trade done. I was a little impatient. I didn't really want to kind of go back and forth and it not happen. And I also wanted to offer a trade that is an example that I'm willing to be reasonable or even go above and beyond maybe what is necessary to get what I wanted to get specifically. And that was just kind of to show the league as well that I'm reasonable, even though maybe we don't see eye to eye on what values what, as Aaron pointed out in the draft. But at least I'm willing. I wanted to show that, like, hey, I'm not trying to steal from you, So that was the other part of it too. I wanted to kind of come that far. So that was my strategy after the fact. That after we drafted, I was like, okay, now I got my top 3 running backs. I got my wide receiver. So now what? And so I was sitting out the first 2 rounds. I wanted to kind of see what happened. And I kind of had, outside of DJ Moore, I had some targeted players that I really wanted for that quantity of players that I thought could could rise above the into the do really well, have a high ceiling kind of thing. And I got 2 of them in that 3rd round. I got 2 of the players I really wanted, which I'm very excited about. And also let me share the screen and I can show you kind of what the draft looked like for me. So obviously the 1st round I didn't get anything. In the 2nd round, nothing. 3rd round I got DJ Chark and I got Marquise Brown. Those 2 were I had those circled. That's who I wanted. I was planning on drafting DJ Chark in the 2nd round. That honestly was my plan before I did the trade. And I was actually wanting to do in the 3rd round, I was hoping to get McLaren. But Josh took him in the 2nd round before I could even draft. So I knew I couldn't get McLaren at that point. But so yeah, I mean, it kind of fell in place. I'm really happy with the way it went because I really did feel like it went exactly the way I wanted. I got 3 really solid top 12 running backs in my opinion. I think all 3 of them have potential to be top 5 players on the season. So I'm really happy with my running back situation. I feel like with Woods and Chark and Marquise Brown, or specifically Woods and Chark, I feel I have some solid, steady players. And Marquise Brown being able to blow up at any week is a huge plus for me. Between just with those 6 players, I'm ecstatic.
Yeah, I think you had.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think with what you were doing, and we talked about receiver being deep. I mean, I think you really executed everything, really, really well because you didn't have the first 2 round of picks, but you're getting a top 10, at least what is projected to be another top 10 guy. And Jacob, so like your running back, I mean, to have those 3 running backs on your roster, you can start all 3 because we got the flex, and then to you kept Woods, and then to get Chark and Hollywood Brown. I thought it was great. I mean, I thought that was, again, this is why, you can do the draft many ways you want. Dwayne got all those picks up front. And so, how do you do the draft? If you have a lot of picks in the front end, like Donald and Dwayne, you can take advantage of that. But at the same time, if you trade, because you're trying to trade for a great player and you have to fall back, you can still take advantage, depending on how the draft flows. And I think you're definitely right about, hey, I didn't have the first 2 rounds, but you get to kind of sit back and watch how the flow of the draft is. Sometimes I think when you're in that position, you can kind of really focus in on what's going on because you just you're waiting, right? You're just sitting there. Okay, well, I don't get to pick for whatever 24, however many picks it was, and so you just get to see what are positions, what are the runs on players, and so I just think there is kind of like I mean, obviously you want to get the best players and have 1st round picks and all that, but there is something to that when you can sit back and watch how the draft is going, that you can just kind of focus in. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of the 1st round, you're just like, okay, here's my board. I'm looking at my board, where are the players going? And you're not, you're just in it. And you start getting going in the draft. Well, when you have to sit there and wait, like you, and of course, Jonathan, who we'll touch on in a minute, you can just kind of see how the draft is flowing and then address your team, in the way that you want.
I mean, in all honesty, I was looking at running backs also in that 3rd round just to see if there was somebody that would have dropped. I would have gone for a 4th running back if one dropped. But I really felt that the tier had dried up as far as the running backs available at that point. And like you said, the wide receivers was the way to go for me. I will say, looking back at the draft, looking at the 1st round, and seeing Dak Prescott go in the second overall pick was heartbreaking. I'm like, oh, I made that trade for nothing, because I would have taken Drake in a heartbeart, and I would have been ecstatic. I feel like Drake is just as good as Jacobs. I think he has the same potential to be a top 5. And I would have been in a really good situation. And then so I was like, okay, I missed out on Drake. What would have happened in the 2nd round? What would I have done in the 2nd round? And I was looking at it, and I honestly think I would have taken DJ Chark in the 2nd round. I really, I maybe it's a little homerism, but I was
No,
looking at, I
no.
didn't have Juju Smith-Schuster as high as he was taken. I didn't have
Neither did I.
Allen Robinson as high as he was taken, or Odell, McLaurin certainly. I was just looking at it, just like, I could have, maybe another running back I could have taken, but that would be silly. Um,
Right.
I was looking
No,
at
I
maybe QB, but yeah, like I really feel like it just that it ended up working out, and
yeah.
I have no regrets in any way.
Richard, go back. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Go back to the second round there, and
Mm-hmm.
I just want to touch on what you're talking about because I think we all have our personal rankings, um, and I think that kind of dictates decisions. I was also not as high on Juju, though I think he should be obviously a lot better than last year. Last year was a disaster. I just was not as high on him. I considered redrafting OBJ because we know what his potential can be, which is like best receiver in the league if things fall right. But again, there's a lot of questions, and he's had so many injuries, and of course, Allen Robinson. Yeah, a lot of mouths to feed. Allen Robinson, I like Allen Robinson even on the bad Bears team just because he gets a lot of targets. But again,
And he's got
it's
a better
hard.
quarterback this year too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did like him. And there was a lot of guys that, AJ Brown. I would have actually loved to have AJ Brown, but I think, how great is he going to be because of the offense that they're in? I don't know. I mean, it would not surprise me if he was one of the best because he is a really awesome player. But again, it just goes back to that, you're weighing all these players and you're just trying to decide, okay, my position, the position I'm looking to fill versus this player and the question marks that come with those guys. This dictates our draft day decisions. I mean, sometimes we just say, hey, this is the best player available and we take them. But it does, and then of course, like you said, your roster. I mean, you have three. I mean, with the three running backs you had, I mean, you have arguably the best, set of three running backs together in the league. I don't know anybody that has better three running backs, together going in. And then, not to mention, you got Cam Akers, and right now it's kind of okay. How's that going to shake out? But I mean,
that's what I did.
You might have
round.
guys to trade. You may be trading at least one running back in the season. If you need to fill a position of need.
Yeah, Cam drafting Cam was believe it or not, it was a tiers. I just drafted 2 wide receivers. I was looking at the wide receivers again, but Stephon Diggs had just gone. I think I probably would have taken Stephon Diggs there if he was available, but he had just gone, and that kind of made me look at running back and see the depletion of the tier that he was in for me. And I went ahead and went for Cam. And he's kind of like, he's a rookie, if I remember correctly. I'm a little out of it, but he's a rookie,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yes.
And
yes.
I like taking a rookie running back that has the potential to start. There's just fun in that. So I just wanted to have the fun of having that rookie running back on my team and kind of see if he did explode, like have that joy of he being on my team,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my thought process. And then just to touch on the 4th round, which was Dwayne's pick and Josh Allen, you could see that it elapsed time was 2 minutes. I didn't pick him. The system picked him. Part of it was after Cam, honestly, I was just satisfied with my picks that I didn't know what to do next. I was just I was just kind of, I had 3 wide receivers. I had 4 running backs. And I was just like, I was looking at the tight ends and just kind of like, I wasn't excited about the tight ends. The QBs, I wasn't really excited about the QBs. I couldn't figure out if I wanted to take another wide receiver or another running back. I was just really struggling with what to do. And time ran out and picked Josh Allen. I'm not complaining, but if I had to go back, I wish I would have made a decision on something other than quarterback, just because of how the quarterbacks fell in the draft. To be honest, it took a long time before the quarterbacks really. I was planning on going late for quarterback, and the available quarterbacks in those late areas that I wanted to go were still there. So it was kind of like, I could have waited, but it is what it is. And then funny enough, I say that, but then the pick right after Josh Allen, I go for Aaron Rodgers. And really, the reason for Aaron Rodgers was because it was Aaron Rodgers, and I just felt like, man, like that's a good value for Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, maybe his production in fantasy has not gone very well the past couple of years. Last year was probably really disappointing for everybody, but it's like he's Aaron Rodgers, and what if things turn around? I couldn't help but take him and just hope for the best. So that was kind of the thought process with getting those two QBs right back to back.
So, Richard, is there one pick that, I mean, obviously talking about if you had to do it with Josh Allen, but is there one where maybe you regretted, maybe even the later rounds where you're like, I should have taken this guy or that guy?
I'll tell you, not regret, but I don't remember taking Marvin Jones. And it's probably because he got auto picked again, and I didn't know it did.
Yeah.
Because I have Marvin Jones, and I just realized I had him. I didn't know I had him.
Too funny.
So
too funny.
So real time, I'm shocked I have Marvin Jones, but it's not a bad pick. It's just kind of to me that was kind of like, Okay.
Yeah.
I honestly in round 7 I would have preferred to do more of a long shot pick than a kind of. I feel like Marvin Jones. We know who he is. We know what he does.
Right.
It would have been different to pick a different, something with a little bit more pizzazz, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, there were a lot of course, the rookies. We always see that, with the rookie position, especially running backs. And so, taking those upside picks, those guys that, if they get going, I mean, they can just take off. There was, you're looking at those guys, are they going to be a third-year breakout? Are they going to be, depending on the position? And then you just take those shots on those players and just say, maybe somebody's going to go off. I think we talked about before, there was one round last year, it was a much later round that like produced like some serious, guys that produced way better than all these earlier rounds. So, I mean, that always happens. So there was definitely some guys that, we know are going to take off. It's just going to be hard to tell because of this season with COVID and no real preseason, rookies just trying to adapt. So, I think that was one of the challenges aside from the running backs, because running backs usually can adjust faster, but, with the receivers, that's a lot harder, deal. And there was a lot of rookie receivers. So that'll be interesting to watch. So we'll talk next week when we go through the teams. I'll talk about one guy that I drafted that I'm really excited about. That probably nobody's thinking that I know if I was going to pick him, but we'll talk about it next week when we look at everybody's teams a little bit more closely and everything. So, Richard, let's go on to the next part of the draft. Okay, so what picks surprised you the most? What are some that surprised you?
The second overall pick with Dak Prescott was the biggest surprise for me. I was like, I got mad a little bit. I got mad a little bit. I'm like, I held it in pretty good, but I think I exclaimed a little bit during the draft, but I held in the frustration with that a little bit. But that was definitely one for sure. That was probably the biggest one for me. And let's see, I'm just gonna scroll through the first and second rounds and go forward and see if there's anything that stands out. How about you?
I wasn't surprised by Dak Prescott. I really believed there was going to be one of those quarterbacks that was going to be taken in the first round. I figured somebody would. I think probably what surprised me was Donald taking the Steelers in the second round. He had a lot of early top 3 round picks and then didn't have any picks for forever and a day. It felt like Donald had just completely left the draft. But just because, as you know, defenses – they just change every year. And some defenses stay consistent, but that is such a hard thing to really nail down. And there were a lot of great players that, he could have taken. So that was surprising to me. I mean, I know that Donald and there's other people in our league that will take defenses earlier, but that was like second round. I just was like, it really, really surprised me.
And he surprised me in the third round going Drew Brees. I was surprised that he went there because he kept Tom Brady, and so I wasn't expecting him to pick Drew Brees so early either. I expected
not only that,
a QB, but to get it surprised me.
Yeah, well, especially since a guy like Kyler Murray was still on the board. That really, that did surprise me. They took him. There was a lot of guys that wasn't surprised. Some people might say, well, Rob Gronkowski, Josh drafting him, but I honestly wasn't surprised because I knew somebody was just going to believe in the fact that, hey, it's Gronk, and all the reports right now are good on him, and so I wasn't surprised by that, but maybe some people were. So,
yeah.
I
think McLaurin going in the second round to Josh surprised me because I didn't have him that high, even though I wanted him.
Right.
I had him last year and I loved having him. And I really wanted him this year, but I didn't want him in the second round. And that was another surprise or at least the first two rounds. That was a big surprise too as well. But I'm happy for Josh. I think he picked up a solid player.
Oh yeah.
It's wishful surprise. I wish he didn't pick them.
Yeah. Was there anybody, Richard, that you just overall, not even necessarily the team, but just anybody that you kind of remember or looking through this draft that you thought, man, I can't believe they fell so far?
I think let me scroll through. I remember having that thought. Let me see if I can remember who it was. I think it was either you or Jonathan picked them, if I remember correctly. Edelman going in the fifth was a little bit of a drop that I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah, Joey. Yeah, I was honestly really surprised. I mean, of course, for me needing to get another receiver, I was pleasantly surprised that he fell so far. But I guess because people are looking at him, with his age and not having the ceiling the other guys do. But
I think the fact that Darryl didn't pick up Baker Mayfield was surprising.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. There wasn't really as many. I don't think I was really surprised. Everybody had a strategy. We can talk about a couple. We'll talk here a little bit just about a couple teams that maybe stood out to us and some of the way they did their draft. But there was of course surprises like there always is. But everybody had a specific strategy, and I think they stuck to it. Darryl drafted a lot of rookies, and it's not a bad thought because like we just you just mentioned somebody that potential one takes off, and you have a great player. So everybody kind of had in their mind, what they were going to do. And then, of course, it got serious later in the draft when everybody got quiet and they're looking at because, like you said, you have maybe kind of your, I don't know, scripted, or you just look at the board and you say, okay, first 4 or 5 rounds, these are our positions I'm going to try to fill. And then you get to like the later part of the draft and you're like, okay, now I have to start, picking between, this guy and that guy. And there's not, so.
Yeah. All right, so Reid, I think we need to wrap it up, but I wanted to, before we do, I think it'd be good to kind of look back at our predictions, at least the ones we remember, because I honestly don't remember all our predictions. But how did we do on our predictions for what you remember?
Well, one of the things was I said that Nathan was going to be the last team to grab a quarterback, and that was incorrect.
That was very incorrect.
Yeah, it was very incorrect. So that was definitely wrong. So
I think I was incorrect by saying John Mack was going to draft more Cowboys and Eagles. He actually didn't draft any Eagles, to be honest.
Yeah, I was correct in saying he drafted the most running backs. Even if CBS helped him do it because he decided just to leave, halfway through. But I was right about that prediction, and You know,
think
I was wrong though, Richard. Richard, you let me down. Okay, you didn't draft 3 kickers, so you let me down.
You didn't draft 2 QBs in the first round, so
That's true. Well, when you brought that up, I thought about it. I was like, man, but I just said no. There's no way I'm doing that. Like you know, I can't do
just
it.
super troll.
Yeah.
I think we talked about wide receivers and running backs were going to be picked a lot in the first 2 rounds. How many were not going to be wide receivers? I think we actually nailed that. I think it was 3, 2 tight ends and a quarterback, right? I think.
Yeah.
I think if we were to be honest with ourselves, I would say that we would probably thought it would be 2 quarterbacks and 1 tight end, but it went 1 quarterback and 2 tight ends. So
yeah.
But yeah. I mean, I think we nailed that one.
Yeah. So, Richard, before we finish out today, just a couple quick things here that we hit. What were maybe just a couple teams, aside from your team, and I talked about my team. What were some teams out there that you just thought, man, I really liked what they did, at least in the first, maybe couple rounds of the draft?
I'm gonna let you go first. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
You go first. I'll respond back.
Okay. All right. So one of the teams that I thought, well, a couple of teams came to mind. The one team, and I'll just hit it quick. I thought what Bruce did with his team just in the beginning, he left. He had Patrick Mahomes. He had 2 great receivers he was keeping. He got Le'Veon Bell. Now, Le'Veon Bell, if he can return to some semblance, at least close to what he was in Pittsburgh, that could pay, could be a great player, right? We know what Bell could be, even though he's playing for the Jets. And then he got OBJ. So I just think with those 2 guys and already having the receivers, guys, I mean, if Bell and OBJ, have a season like we've seen, or at least close to it, maybe not, where they're like number 1, but at least close to it, I think that his team could be a team that, watch out for this season. I mean, he followed up with Darren Waller. So I liked what he did because he has potential. I mean, his team could really, if things fall right, and he could have a great team.
I think I said before, I really liked the way you approached the different way you did it this year. I think I just respect the choices you made. First 2 picks in the first round, in the way you did it. I think it's going to be. It's more of like I'm really curious more than anything else about how it's going to turn out. I think it's going to be favorable for you, but I'm just really curious how it's going to work out because it's very different than anybody else did, really, to be honest, I think.
Well, you know me, Richard. I go way out there sometimes, for better or worse.
I'm looking at PC's roster, and I think it's sneaky good.
Yeah.
He has Dalvin Cook that he kept, but he picked up Singletary and Swift for the first and second round to go along with him. Right. And then he has Devontae Adams and Michael Gallup as his wide receivers. He's got Kelsey that he kept. I think if it's going to be a PC Reid reunion for the Super Bowl, I don't know what I'm going to do. But apparently I like those 2 the most. I don't know.
Well, he did. His draft, it was kind of, it's funny. Some drafts, they just go and they're kind of quiet and maybe they don't have like the wow guys, but he really did pick up guys that, I mean, they're just good players. They have some good situations. One other team that and he's in our division, but I thought considering everything, I really thought Jonathan did a really good job. He didn't have first 2 rounds, picks.
Yeah, for what
he was able to get right, like you, and he was able to get in the 3rd round. And so, he went out and, he got DK Metcalf. And I think with all the run on receivers, like I told you, it was kind of Metcalf was like that last in that tier that I was like, oh yeah, if he, I'm going to grab him in the 3rd round. And then when he grabbed Metcalf, so you tie him with, he has Godwin already. And then to get Kyler Murray, who, he has the upside to be the top quarterback. I mean, he has everything there from that he could be. Just to get that, I think was really good. And then Parker, I'm not huge on Devontae Parker this year, but regardless, I mean, he's the number one receiver. Yeah, he's his third wide receiver, and he's the number one guy for the Dolphins. And he showed last year that, hey, he's not, he can actually do it. Obviously the big question is going to be the second running back position. But, I mean, even to get Mostert, I mean, who knows what the 49ers are going to do. But I just feel like, if he plays like he did last year, I mean, Jonathan's going to be positioned really well. So.
Honestly, Mostert dropping as far as he did is actually that's a good one to kind of point out that I was surprised when he picked him up because I overlooked it. I was like, wait, Mostert was Mostert,
Yeah.
So that was a surprise how far he dropped, and I mean, having McCaffrey's almost 2 running backs by himself. I mean, with the amount of points that he got, and that's what he paid for, and that's what's gonna do really well for him as long as McCaffrey stays healthy. And having Mostert, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen in San Francisco as far as the way they do their running backs, but if Mostert's on fire and Shanahan allows him to do his thing, I mean,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And then he's got Gibson. He's got Gibson as well, which is potentially the starter for the football team and the football team Washington.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. Gibson's going to be a really intriguing player just in general to watch and just see what happens with his, history and him coming in. Richard, Tunavites. So as we wrap up today's show, I just want to let you guys know. So next week, here's what you guys can look forward to. First of all, you need to subscribe. You need to watch the show. Okay, don't be like Nathan who goes on draft day and goes, "Oh, I didn't watch the last episode." Okay, actually, be active. Don't be one of those Tunavites. So next week we're going to be having a special guest from the league. So we'll let you, you'll get just be a surprise and have a special guest with us, talk about the draft, how they feel about their team, and then Tunavites. What we're going to do is we are going to go into. So if your team wasn't talked about and you feel like, man, they don't talk about my team, we're going to go through all the teams and just look at the whole roster and maybe revisit some of your draft picks and how your roster construction, how it looks, guys we like, guys we don't like. And we're also going to be looking at the divisions. Who do you think is the favorite to win each division now post-draft? And even some of our picks for breakout players. So not even teams, just maybe players that we think, man, they are primed, they're going to break out. Or maybe some guys that we think are just going to be colossal busts because it happens every single year. So we're going to be hitting all that next week.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it, Richard.
Me too. I'm excited. Even though I know I look excited, but I am excited. It's just 11 o'clock at night. So
I was going to say, Richard, you're still trying to catch up on sleep, in your draft. You drafted in your pajamas. So, that was good fun. Well, Tunavites, the draft was a great success, and it was good to have everybody together. We're looking forward to a great season. So tune in to us. We'll see you back next week.